My name is Elizabeth. I divorced my husband 10 years ago and now live with my daughter, Sophie. Sophie is a senior in high school. This spring, she will graduate from high school and has decided to go to college. I couldn't afford to send her to college on my income alone, but Sophie got in through a recommendation, so her tuition is completely waived. It's truly a blessing for me. We have been through a lot since I divorced when Sophie was in elementary school. I often think of myself as a failed mother, but I've been relying on Sophie's kindness. It all started 20 years ago. I married my husband, Michael. Michael's family home was a traditional house. My father-in-law, who welcomed us, was an old-fashioned and kind man, fitting for the house. But the problem was my mother-in-law. Even when I was dating Michael, she seemed not to like me. She doted on Michael. The first thing she said to me after my self-introduction was, "Elizabeth, what's with that short skirt? And isn't your makeup too flashy for visiting your boyfriend's family?" I was wearing a knee-length dress that day. And my makeup was my usual natural look. Although my father-in-law defended me, Michael just nodded along with his mother's words. We didn't stay long that day, but it was still mentally draining for me. I thought life would be gloomy with such a mother-in-law. Yet, Michael said it wouldn't matter much as we wouldn't see each other often after marriage. Indeed, unless we lived together, it seemed unlikely we'd see each other daily. His words somehow reassured me. My indecisiveness swayed my life choices. After dating Michael for 2 years, we decided to get married when he got promoted. His proposal was the classic "I will definitely make you happy." To me, it was a delightful and ideal proposal. Of course, if he had lived up to his words. But married life with Michael was far from ideal. Initially, he wanted me to quit my job and be a homemaker, but as soon as I quit, he started saying terrible things. Must be nice being a housewife without a job. No kids and still not working, what a luxury. Being timid, I couldn't talk back. When I considered part-time work, he accused me again. Looking for a part-time job to find a lover, huh? I was confused about what to do. Then I became pregnant and had our daughter without ever working. I'll never forget what my mother-in-law said when she visited the hospital. "Having a girl, what about the family heir?" I remember my father-in-law quietly getting angry at her words. "My husband has a brother, so he could be the heir," she sarcastically remarked. I thought then it would be fine if our relationship ended. But reality was harsh. About 6 months after my daughter was born, an incident occurred. My mother-in-law had an affair, and my father-in-law was furious, demanding a divorce. Their home was about a 2-hour drive away, so we didn't meet often and I didn't know the details. But it was true she had an affair, and as a result, my father-in-law decided to divorce her. My mother-in-law came to our house crying. It was honestly a nuisance, as Sophie, my daughter, was still young. Yet, Michael allowed her to stay with us, saying it would be fine for a while. Michael, who was doted on by her, sided with his mother over his father, always believing she was right. I expressed my concerns about living together to Michael, but he gently told me, "Sophie is young, and it must be hard for you, Elizabeth. Wouldn't it be less of a burden if Mom stayed? Besides, it's just until she finds a place to live." I wasn't convinced, but decided to endure it. However, my mother-in-law would call me away without hesitation even when I was taking care of Sophie. She left all the household chores to me and even complained about the meals. Instead of reducing the burden, it only increased. Despite the initial talk of it being temporary, she showed no signs of looking for another place. As I was concerned about societal judgment of single mother, I just endured it. Day by day, I became numb, even able to ignore my mother-in-law's words. I was scolded every time, but I kept enduring, letting the words wash over me. Years passed with no progress on her moving out, and Sophie started elementary school. Sophie grew up quiet, just like me. My mother-in-law didn't like that, complaining to Sophie as well. Thinking being quiet is cute? Such an indecisive personality, just like Elizabeth. Oh, how annoying. That's when I seriously started considering divorce. Michael was rarely home, citing his busy work, and never stood up to his mother. Then, when Sophie was 8, the moment came. Michael's affair was discovered. The other woman was a clerk at a business partner. Unable to bear this life any longer, I chose divorce immediately. I had been thinking about working again since I suspected the affair, and had contacted my former boss and colleagues. Luckily, my former boss, who had started his own business, offered me a job, so Sophie and I could manage on our own. When I presented the divorce papers to Michael, he and his mother attacked me. How will you live after divorce without a job? It's because the wife isn't competent that the husband turns to an affair, right? I was so angry I wanted to retort, but no words came out. During this confrontation, Sophie woke up and came to me. "Mom, what's wrong?" She jumped into my arms, looking up at me with concern. I realized I was the only one who could protect her. With that thought, I found strength. I won't be manipulated by you anymore. I'm getting a divorce. I said that, loaded our prepared bags and Sophie into the car, and left the house. Later, with a lawyer's help, I filed for alimony and child support, and the divorce was finalized. Of course, I also claimed compensation from the other woman. There was a brief relief when she paid the compensation. But Michael only paid alimony and child support once. I tried contacting him for the payments. I've moved and it's hard to live alone now. Just wait a bit. I naively waited. Upon further research, I found out that only 24% of single-mother households actually receive child support. Additionally, even among those who initially received child support, the percentage of single-mother households that eventually stop receiving payments due to discontinuation is as high as 15%. In other words, 3 out of 4 single mothers are not receiving child support, a seriously critical situation. I never realized this until I was in that position. Busy with work and Sophie's school, I had no time to think about it, just struggling to survive. Sophie, being a child of a single mother, was bullied at school, and I was desperate to protect her. 10 years have passed since those days. When Sophie was about to graduate from high school, Michael and my mother-in-law suddenly visited. I was shocked and speechless, wondering how they found our place. But I couldn't afford to lose this battle. "What do you want?" Michael, without any sense of guilt, replied. "Mom says we need an heir, so can you return our daughter?" His words made my blood boil. Return her? Sophie isn't an object. Besides, someone who doesn't pay child support has no right to see her. Isn't Sophie 18 now? Are you still treating her like a child? As Michael spouted incomprehensible things, my mother-in-law started saying something even more absurd. "Sophie would have an easier life living with us than with you. We'll come to pick her up tomorrow, so be ready," she said. Wait a minute. What do you mean by heir? Since Michael isn't remarrying, we're worried about the future. It would be troublesome if something happened to me. Are they planning to use Sophie as a carer for my mother-in-law? I couldn't bear the thought after raising my daughter with so much care. Michael, laughing, continued. Plus, Dad's not going to be around much longer. So, we're planning to live in his house. Since our parent-child relationship hasn't been severed, I'll inherit the family home and assets. Despite the affair and divorce? You're returning to your father's house? My exclamation enraged my mother-in-law. Don't dig up something that happened years ago. As I realized I had unintentionally hit a nerve, Sophie returned from school. Seeing her, Michael rushed over. Sophie. It's your dad. You've grown so much. My mother-in-law followed suit. Starting tomorrow, you'll live with your dad and grandma. Sophie, initially puzzled, then burst into laughter. Huh? Grandma, are you okay, in the head? Have you gone senile? Her response angered my mother-in-law even more. What a way to talk. Elizabeth, how did you raise her? As my mother-in-law tried to grab me, Sophie stepped in. She brushed off my mother-in-law's hand and assumed a judo throw position. Alarmed, I raised my voice. Sophie, wait. Sophie paused, looking startled, and released her hold on my mother-in-law. After Michael and I divorced, Sophie became a target of bullying. One day, she suddenly expressed a desire to learn judo. It seemed abrupt, so I asked her why. She told me someone who practiced judo had protected her from bullies on her way home from school. Watching from afar, she thought becoming strong in judo would make her fearless against the bullies. I wanted to fulfill my daughter's wish, so I let her take judo lessons. Sophie improved rapidly. Her quiet personality transformed, becoming more assertive and better at socializing. Now, she's like a different person, strong and confident. In high school, she even competed in national competitions, earning her a college recommendation for judo. Michael and my mother-in-law were visibly shaken by Sophie's transformation. "So, what do you want from me?" Intimidated by Sophie's presence, Michael and my mother-in-law left hastily. After I explained everything, Sophie sighed deeply, then looked serious. "Can we visit Grandpa?" We hadn't been in touch with my father-in-law since the divorce, even though he had always been kind to us. The following weekend, I took Sophie to visit her grandfather. My father-in-law, who welcomed us, looked healthier than the stories we had heard suggested. After explaining the situation to him, he sighed deeply. "I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused you and Sophie." Even after the divorce, he apologized. It turned out that Michael's assumption about his father's health was premature, and Sophie and I were relieved. Then, unexpected visitors arrived. "Why are you two here?" It was my mother-in-law and Michael. I responded firmly. "I brought Sophie to see her grandfather because she wanted to visit him. You, having been divorced, shouldn't have any business here, right?" My father-in-law also raised his voice. "Elizabeth is right. Get out of here. Michael, I've severed ties with you as a son. And don't you dare come back. I won't leave a penny of my estate to either of you." Sophie delivered the final blow to the agitated pair. "I tend to throw people around when I'm angry. Are you sure you want to stay?" Hearing this, Michael and my mother-in-law froze. "Don't ever show your faces here again." My words sent them fleeing. After that, Sophie and her grandfather rekindled their relationship. About once a month, Sophie and I would visit him, and he's still healthy. Thanks to my father-in-law's help, we got a lawyer and demanded the unpaid alimony and child support from Michael. To our surprise, he paid everything in one lump sum. Furthermore, through the lawyer, we arranged an agreement that Michael and my mother-in-law would never approach us again. Michael and my mother-in-law ended up penniless, both working day and night. I feel joyful supporting Sophie, who is thriving in judo at college. Supported by various people, we mother and daughter have found happiness. I hope for even more happiness for Sophie.